Yeah.
You laughing about Chuckles?
All I could see was John's face, and he was like,
John's face makes me laugh also.
He's making the hurry up and turn it on kind of look.
Well, the best part is that it's been on the whole time.
Yeah, but that's right. I'm looking at John's face with live, and he was sitting there making faces, doing the hurry up and make it live.
Yep. We've been recording all of this. Just reading the news here. Apparently, Outkast is making a new album. All right.
Important things to talk about.
It is important stuff. Exactly. Get Big Boy back into commission. Hey, everybody. It's the ASP.NET Community Stand-Up. Damien does not like us anymore, so he doesn't come to these anymore.
We didn't offer him $150 million for his to reprise his role.
What's that about? Daniel Craig, $150 million to play Bond. Not that good. Not
did you get a message? Are they going to take you up?
No, I put my cell phone out there and I said I would be more than willing to play Bond. Mm-hmm. Apparently, though, they need a Bond that's more than just a slap fighter. You know what I mean? Because playing James Bond, but then stop with the kicking. Is somehow less attractive than they. Anyway, all right. So let's talk about communities. What's going on in the community, and then Glenn is going to share with us some Docker stuff. Cool.
Yeah.
John Galloway.
Awesome. All right, here we go. We got a post from Talking.
Slow down. Okay, I gotta share you out. Hang on. I'm sorry, John. I want to make sure that you're full screen and that you're respected. All right, please, go ahead.
All right, post on talking.net. This is about integrating Hangfire with ASP.NET Core Web API. So Hangfire for performing background processing. So that's cool. We got two from Hisham. So we have one on introduction to OpenID Connect, two from Andrew Locke and later two from Hisham. So first from Andrew Locke, this is on integrating OpenID Connect. So he previously looked at OAuth, and now he's explaining why you'd look at OpenID Connect and what it offers and how to set that up. So that's cool. And another on post redirect get using temp data. So allow you to do post redirect get pattern and show information once you kind of finish the redirect. So that's handy. So this is a nice a series that Sean Wildermuth is starting on what he learned building with ASP.NET Core. So he's been, doing a lot of stuff, teaching and blogging and all kinds of stuff about ASP.NET Core. And this is kind of taking a step back and looking at some, different things he ran into. And this one he's looking at routing, but just kind of a cool series there, kind of some different things he's learned along the way. Eric Anderson, he's troubleshooting an issue with unable to start process .NET exe. So what happened was he copied some code from one computer to another, and it was unable to find .NET exe. And the issue is that application host.config, which is stored in your .vs folder, has a physical path link to your .NET exe. And so, the trick is he kind of highlights at the end of this, you really should ignore that, and you shouldn't be copying that folder between them. But that's handy for just to know about for troubleshooting that.
I mean, you generally should ignore that folder, right? The .vs.
Exactly. Yep. But if you don't, remember this. This is what's going wrong. Mm-hmm. Okay, here's two from Hisham. So this one is looking at using route data in for localization. So he's explaining how you can go through and configure route data and kind of pull that up. So. And another one from Hisham on chart controls using Morris.js and a tag helper. So I love to see this. This is a great example of keeping your UI, doing a lot with your UI, but keeping the code itself relatively.
How did they end up doing it? Was it with a tag helper or?
Yeah, this is a tag helper right here that he's created.
See, this is the thing. I feel like this is where tag helpers plus clean JavaScript is such a great opportunity for ASP.NET Core to shine. Versus, there are things about Ruby I like, there are things about Node that I like, but I just feel like tag helpers plus nice libraries is just where we shine. I hope that the open source community and the folks that have maybe historically not looked at Microsoft at some point look at this stuff.
Damien is saying in Gitter that we're actually looking to include a route database localization culture provider.
Ah,
Very
cool.
natural. Very natural.
Right.
Good stuff.
For those of you who aren't on Gitter, you probably should be.
Oh yeah. It's a reminder. We've got a Getter chat going on. And Damien, not showing up to the thing, but chatting away. So he's virtually here. Okay, one from, we got a couple Docker posts, one from Stefan. Here he's talking about ASP.NET Core continuous deployment using Docker Hub. And another one, this one's cool. This one's from Amjad, and he's got 9 Docker templates for Core. So what's cool here is he's showing kind of all these different ways that you can deploy different endpoints, different styles of deployment, and he's got all the Docker files set up for you.
Nice.
So pretty neat.
We'll probably touch a little bit of that today.
Yep. Here is an MSDN article on feature slices. So we've kind of talked about, we've had some different people blog about this over time. This is a nice in-depth article, and the idea with feature slices is organizing your code instead of having controller folder and a views folder and all that, to actually segment your code more so that it's by feature. So you've got like a say a Ninjas folder, and it's got your controllers and views, and you got your pirates and controllers, views, etc. So nice to see him kind of dig into that in more depth. This is from Barry Dorans. He's talking about the bug bounty has been extended, and kind of giving some more details about that. Exciting.
It is.
Okay, John Hilton explaining how and why to use Mediator for notifications. So I love with this post, he kind of tells a story, and he explains, like, okay, I've got a controller, now my boss wants me to go and start sending, an email message, and later I have to do a CRM message, and now my controller is getting really bloated. So he talks about using Mediator to separate that out, and use Mediator's notifications for that. So pretty cool. This one, some guy named Scott wrote a post on publishing ASP.NET Core website to a cheap Linux VM host. So this was Linode. Very cool.
Is this guy trustworthy?
Flash notepad. Notepad. Totally unreliable.
So we've got another one here. This is let me see, Brock and Damien, and they're talking about identity server for RC1. Very exciting, late breaking news here.
Well, the late breaking news is specifically.
So you linked it to
the release. I linked it. Yeah, we just pasted it to you moments ago. What's significant is that Brock and Dominic have spent the last 2 weeks working very, very hard refactoring, but they've got this running on ASP.NET Core. So if you scroll down a little bit where it says the overview, look at that. A lot of stuff. You've got support for core authentication middleware. You've got external authentication support. Lots and lots of cleanup. Very clean. So if you're doing any kind of work with JWT or any kind of identity server type stuff, check it out, identityserver.io. Very, very hard-working group here, putting together a lot of great software that we rely on every day.
Yep. Cool. So this is, I forget his name, I think Chris Haskell. He's actually links over to a post here, which we featured way back in January. But what's cool that Chris has been doing is he's actually updating these. So he's been updating along the way for both Angular and ASP.NET Core releases. So, if you go back and look at the commits, you can see it's continually updating all the way along the way. So handy if you're using Angular and ASP.NET Core together and need to kind of update and migrate to see what's been done in that. This is Jerry Pelser, and he's got a course here on building a contact list with ASP.NET Core.
I like that. I really respect the work that people are putting into their blogs. Look at this. He's got like cool graphic deals and stuff. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I got to step up my game.
It is good. Speaking of graphics, here we got something from James. This is image processor core or processor core, depending. So this is exciting because this, people talk about, well, I don't have system.drawing. What am I going to do? And here he's talking about, this is a .NET Core specific image processing library. So, you get a lot of code, and at the end you end up with beautiful images. What's better than that? Here's a post from Donovan, just a nice quick post, but an important thing to be aware of is that you can set in your project JSON, you can set your output name to specify what your assembly name is, right? So for a build or for...
Otherwise, it'll be project name, right?
Exactly. So good to know. This is something I've been seeing, people talking about, Log4net, and there's a lot of interest in where's Log4net and Log4net core, and so I've been looking at this. Actually, ton of stuff. I believe it's Stefan Bodwig has been working on this, and tons of commits and merge pull requests, etc. So they've got nlog working with .NET Core, and got it integrated to the build. So I'm expecting to see this out very soon. So that's very exciting.
That is going to be significant. I've been using this for 15 years.
Yeah. So the last one I wanted to end with here, this is from Simon Timms, and there's been some community discussion, and some people ping me on Twitter and wanted me to include this as well. So this is about how to use HTTP client. Should you be reusing it? Should you be, the issue is it implements iDisposable. So the common pattern is to wrap it in a using. But if you do that, then you hit some performance issues because it's recreating this thing every single time. So we discussed this a little bit, and then there's more issues where people discuss down in the comments, and there's links where it's like, hey, if you reuse this, be careful, because you could, if your server does not send connection close, then reusing HTTP client can cause it not to follow DNS redirects, which is an issue. So the example of this would be you're on, say for instance, you're using site slots on Azure, on an Azure app service, and you do a flop, you switch your active production slot. It's not going to necessarily follow that that DNS redirect. So we talked about this before, and I think we all agreed that the best thing to do is just get Chris Ross on here in the future, maybe next week, and have him kind of educate us on this and more on networking. Does that sound good?
If you need a deep dive into networking and ASP.NET, Chris Ross is certainly the guy.
Okay. Well, so I'm done. I don't know if you guys have any other comments on that, but that's it for me.
Oh, that's cool.
I have to figure out how to unscreen share here.
No, that's fine. I'll just kick you out of the room. It's fine.
Yeah.
All right.
You've done your bit,
Glenn, I understand you have some stuff to share around Docker.
I do.
I am going to lock on you right now.
You're going to lock on me.
I'm locked on you now.
Indeed. Everything is locked on me. Okay. I do have some stuff to talk about Docker. What I wanted to do, we have been talking about, and we will probably push soon, an ASP.NET specific Docker image again. For those of you who have been using Docker, our stuff, for a little while, and we used to have one in like the RC beta timeframe. There was an ASP.NET specific image, and then when we released RC2 and RTM with .NET CLI, we didn't really need anything ASP.NET specific anymore. We had the .NET CLI, and ASP.NET Core application is just a .NET console app that calls into some libraries to do magic. So we just relied on the .NET. I really have to turn off Gitter. However, after a little while, we went with that, and that what we thought was true. That is true. You can just use the .NET image, and we now have some ideas for how we could add value on top of that .NET image to give you an ASP.NET specific image. So what I'm going to do is I might share my screen, and we will go and look at some stuff. First, we'll look at Inception. And then we'll close Gitter. So the things that I'm going to talk about, there's this doc that I want to point some people to, docs.microsoft.com. I'll post it into, well, I won't post it into Gitter right now because I just closed it, but I am sure that John will do something to make it available. This was pushed not very long ago, and it talks about a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today without talking about the ASP.NET specific side of it. Just goes over the available .NET images and the and goes and a little bit of a tutorial for how you can some different ways to use it. It's kind of like a lighter version of that one you just showed from the community. Okay, so let's talk about what you can do today when using Docker and .NET. I'm not going to go into depth about what Docker is or any of those sorts of things. If you feel like you really want like a kind of talk or a bunch of time spent talking about containers and how containers could help you and how you might use them in a typical ASP.NET flow or something like that, then let us know and we'll see what we can do. But this probably isn't that. So I kind of assume some pre-knowledge about Docker, assuming that is okay with both you and both Scott and John. So we have two categories of images. There's 3 .NET images, and this is where there's a bunch of confusion, or a lot of confusion. I've started to pick up the word a bunch of, since I've moved to America, about which image you should use for what things you want to do. And it comes down to 2 questions. Do you want to build inside your container, or do you want to just run an already built application? If you want to build inside your container, then you need to use these development images. If you want to run an already built application, then you need to use these runtime images. And the difference is that in your development images, they are much bigger, hundreds of megabytes bigger. They have more stuff. They have wget, and they have git, and they have curl, and they have a whole bunch, a bunch of other kind of common dev libraries that people need to build applications. And they have the .NET SDK, which includes.
How would we know that other than you saying it? Because like looking at this list here, it makes us look more complicated than we are, and it's scary.
Sure.
Can we hide the alpha stuff or hide preview 1? Like, can we do something?
We can hide.
Make it not look so scary.
We can hide all this information. They will still be there as images. We could try and make this a little bit less scary. Sure. What you start to see is though, like, let's see, like Java. We're not like unusual.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, maybe having just like current version stuff right at the top. Current version, here's your development. This one's bigger, has more stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, absolutely. That's we can work on this. It's fine. And you're right. There is not very many ways. We have some descriptions down here. Again, more text though, but they kind of describe what they are. But yes, it takes reading, and it can be kind of scary and intimidating. And to be honest, most of the time, even when I'm picking something up, I'll see something like this or something like our big list of stuff, and I'll just go latest, whatever that happens to be. Because what Docker has is a concept of latest. If I go Docker pull Microsoft/.NET, it just picks one, right? Whichever the one is that it needs to get.
Your weirdo font offends me.
My weirdo font offends you?
Yeah, what is this weird narrow font you're using here?
I don't know, but you being offended by my very personal computer stuff.
All right, I retract my offensiveness.
Excellent.
Offendedness.
So when you say Docker pull.net, you get something, right? It just pulled Microsoft/.NET latest. And what we have done, which we looked kind of around the Docker ecosystem and said, okay, it looks like for most people, if you just say, Docker pull node or something, or Docker pull whatever language, you get an image that's capable of building a project for that thing. So when you say Docker pull Microsoft/.NET, what you get is basically the most broadly applicable image that we've got. So regardless of what it is you're trying to achieve, it's capable of doing it. If you want to just run a precompiled app in Microsoft/.NET, it will work. If you want to build, it will work. It's got restore, it's got everything. It also means it's the biggest possible image. So your application image at the end of building this thing is probably going to be as big as it could be, right? But it also means if you're just playing around and you're just learning and you just say, oh, from .NET, then it'll do whatever you're trying to do without you running into strange issues because something isn't installed on the machine. However, we have a couple of other issues. We have images. We have 1.0.0-core, which is this image. So you can say either Microsoft/.NET : version number core, so 1.0.0-core, if you explicitly want 1.0.0. There'd be like a 101, for example, or something, as versions go on. Or you could just do core without version number dash, and that'll just get you whatever the latest core is. And that is just the runtime. It is, there's a .NET exe that all it can do is run a compiled DLL. So it has the OS dependencies that you need on Linux, libicu and these sorts of dependencies, and enough to run a DLL, and that's it. Okay? They're basically the two things you want to care about. Everything else are kind of just choices, variations, and things that you can do, but they're the two main things. You're either building in an image and you use the build one, or you're not and you use this .NET Core. Things like this core deps, it's like if you're doing standalone, you can choose to use this instead of like self-contained, I think we call it more publicly in the docs. You could use just core deps, which is a bit smaller again because it doesn't have the .NET CLI at all on it. But you would have to, that's the choice you would, if you're choosing to go down that path, then this is an image to support you down that. But I suspect this is the most common that people want to use. Does that all make sense? Do you two following along?
Yeah. I mean, this is something I'm picking up more as I'm, learning more about Docker, is like managing your base images so that you are like, you want as much as you're probably going to use a lot so that, it restores quickly and you build your new images quickly, but no more, because you get a lot of bloat. And, like for instance, I was using a base image that also had all the node stuff and NPM and everything, right? And then it was doing a ton of apt-get and all this stuff to set up node dependencies as well. Yeah, and that's a nice thing that, with the release version of the Dockerfile not requiring node for the basic hello world stuff.
Yeah, that's right. So and you can kind of see when you look, I don't know how much people have played with this history command. You can go .NET, right? If you go do this, it tells you the different layers and what commands happen. If you go --no--trunk so that it doesn't truncate these commands, you can see the full command that was run in order to generate all of this size if you want to. It makes it difficult to kind of read on a small screen, and but so it's not very good for presenting. But if you're just kind of interested in learning, then you can actually go and look, where is all this size coming from? In this case, I happen to know that this is the base Debian image. These two are installing common build tools. Like this 122 meg is Git, Subversion, wget, curl. I think maybe wget and curl are in this 44 meg, the libc, things like that, right? And then this line here is installing the dependencies of the .NET of the CLR. So they're dependencies like libicu, things like that we require. If you look at our getting started Linux instructions, you end up seeing this list of kind of libraries that are required for our stuff to run. It says they're only 1.6 megabytes, but that's because many of them are already installed in those previous layers. I think if you don't have any of them, it's like 40 meg or something, 50 meg. And then this 113 meg here is the CLR. It's the .NET CLI with an SDK and everything like that. So this is where all of the size is coming from. You put your app on top of this and it's oh, this 132 meg is a package cache as well to speed up restores and stuff later on, right? So you don't want any of this at runtime probably, but you do want it when you're building inside the image because all these things are useful. If we could compare that with the core image, you can see it's very different. All right. So let's do something. Let's say .NET new -t web. Let's just do .NET new. .NET restore. It says hello world, right? Hopefully most of you guys are fairly familiar with with this already. So we're just going to take a console app. This works the same if this was a web application. It's just simpler because there's less code in this case. So I'm not going to worry about it, about making it explicitly an ASP.NET Core application. So we have a console app, it runs. How do we like Dockerify it? Let's go touch Dockerfile. Now we said that there was this build image, this image where you could use to build inside of a container, and then an image that you would use to run at a runtime. So what we're going to look at is from what it might look like to do from Microsoft Core, because everybody seems to fall into the case where they take the bigger image and then they load their app in and they build it and then they run it. And it's kind of, there's plenty of instructions for that. Sometimes less obvious how it's easy, how you can kind of get to not doing that. So then we're going to say add everything into a folder called app, set my work dir to /app. And then I'm going to say entry point. And I'm going to say .NET because that's our entry point. And we're going to say, what is this app going to end up being called? Standup.dll probably. Right. And then I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to go to my project JSON here. And I'm going to add publish options. Publish options. We need includes, right? We need to include our Dockerfile. Right? Because I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say .NET publish. I'm going to look in my bin, my publish folder, and I want my Dockerfile to be included in my publish output. So that now I can come into here and I can say, Docker, I want you to build an image and I want you to call it Standup, and I want you to build this folder. This dot means this folder that I'm in here is the same as that. That means that's what is in my Docker context, which means when I say move dot into app, it's everything inside this folder gets moved into my /app folder. Right. Now I have a Docker image. And if I say Docker run Standup, then it says hello world. Right. Except that hello world DLL is running in a, oh, bang, that probably was very loud. Running in a Linux container on my machine. It's been published beforehand, so it's very fast now, and it's fairly small, 253 megabytes, right? Like I haven't really added any size on top of the base image. It's about as small as you can get right now. Is that cool?
I'm trying to absorb it. I'm looking at all the different numbers and stuff and making sure I understand how this thing gets layered. It is confusing. It sounds so. How much smaller is it than before?
Well, so this is like, I've only done this once, right? So it's just 253 megs. The alternative would be if I change this, let's say I change this base to just be Microsoft.NET, right? I'm still not going to build inside the image, so I'm not really utilizing that. But if I was to do that and then go and publish again.
So people on Gitter are saying it was 700 megs 6 months ago.
Yeah. No, well, 6 months ago you could do this as well.
Oh, by the way, everyone on the planet is offended by your font and your background. So just want to make sure that that's in case there's any confusion.
I love the font. I'm just trying to identify it.
Don't change it.
No. I want to know what it is. Is it
feel
Hermit?
Really bad about it. That's the goal.
I'm super interested. Is it Hermit or what?
What I was doing not long ago before, and I forgot to change it, was I was playing around with ligature fonts. So
yeah.
One of these fonts.
Yeah.
This is one of the fonts.
Ooh. What the heck is that?
Yeah.
Which font is this then? Is it the Iovenska?
Oh, is this that one ligature one I tweeted about a couple weeks ago?
Different one to that, but it's very much similar, very similar.
Ligature fonts are fonts that take things like hash rockets or the Anders operator and turn it into a glyph.
So this one, I can't remember if
do it again. Do it again. Do the hash rocket again.
Is that Iovenska?
No, but there's lots of different ones like it.
This one, I can't. There's the one I can't remember if this is one, but there's one of them which will take it knows about font awesome.
Yeah.
And when you put like a font awesome name, like glyph in your code, it'll replace it with the glyph and things like that.
Cool.
At the font level. Anyway.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, so now we can say Docker build, and we'll give it standup /big, just so its name's different, so you can see. And if I say Docker images, then this is the size difference between using the build image as a base versus the.
There you go.
non-build
That's a
image
good
as
way
base.
to do it. That's a very visceral example.
Yeah.
And if you look at node, a node one is going to be about the same size.
So this is the node base image. This is the node base image here. It's 651 meg.
Yeah.
Right. Their slim image is about 40 meg smaller than our slim image.
That's before they run npm install and it goes to like 600 gigs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But on the other side, our like hello world is a few meg, and theirs is like 7 kilobytes. So, trade-off.
Well, 7 kilobytes, but 900 files.
Yeah. Well, 7 kilobytes of applications, JavaScript, and 100 megabytes worth of npm packages, including a Kappa GIF somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so it's kind of comparable, right? Like our images are actually our fat image is actually a bit smaller than Node's fat image, but they have the option of going a lot smaller because they can run on Alpine.
That's true, and which someday we hopefully will too.
And someday we will as well. And so for those of you who don't know anything about Alpine, if you go Docker history, if we look at Standup, this 125 megabytes is Debian. It's basically the smallest one Linux that we run on right now. Well, what look like reliably. Alpine's about 4 or 5 meg.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Yeesh.
So theoretically, you could just drop all of that, say that 100 megabytes. Now, it seems entirely possible that once you've gone that small, there's like many more dependencies that the CLR just needs to run. So this layer might get bigger.
Yeah, you're saying you might get Alpine for a couple of megs and then end up adding 100 megs of dependencies.
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. Who knows? But we'll find out.
We'll find out. Now, I don't think that'll necessarily be the case. Like, as you can see, Node has like a lot of difference. So I hope that we can get down to, I'm hoping we can drop like 100 meg off of the image by switching to Alpine. And that'll put you into like 150.
Could you bring the base Alpine image in just to put in that list there real quick?
Alpine. Well, I actually already have Alpine because that's the base image of Node Slim. So I could show you the Node Slim.
Okay.
But we'll see if this pulls very quickly. Okay.
True.
So this is Alpine down the bottom here. It's 4.7 megabytes.
Yeah.
So you look at the Docker history Node Slim.
So these sizes. So let me ask you a dumb question. But I think
I just realized.
Let me ask you a dumb question, Glenn. Yeah. My value, of course, comes from asking dumb questions.
It does indeed.
It does. So why should we care? Is this about server density? Is this a kind of thing where, 10, 20, 50 megs, it's not that huge of a deal, but then when you think about it in the context of 1,000 of these running in some enterprise somewhere, it's a big deal?
It's absolutely not a dumb question, and it's absolutely not a big deal, except everybody thinks it is.
Why does everyone think it's a big deal? Is this another micro-optimization where we're putting too much thought into this than is necessary?
Not too much, right? So there is some value in, like, how fast you can move your application image. So like, let's talk about, I'm going to deploy standup/big to a machine. I'm going to deploy standup to a machine. Then what I need to do is I probably want to push this image to some remote server. And then I want my environment, wherever it is, maybe to pull that image down. And then maybe there's several machines that are going to run instances of this application. And I want to go, and so I need to copy it to all of those those machines and then start it up. So all that time I just said, where I'm like sending it up to a server and then sending it over to my environment and then moving it around between the machines, that's all going to be slower the bigger your image is, right? If your image is a gigabyte, then all that stuff is slow. And you pay the cost every time you deploy. So if you're the sort of person who's trying to deploy several times a day, that 1 gigabyte adds up, right? That's a lot of bandwidth going around your network. If your application, on the other hand, is like some Go application that doesn't do very much, it's really small, you can run it directly on top of Alpine. So your whole application is like 10 megabytes.
Okay.
And that 10 megabytes being copied around all over the place doesn't use up a whole ton of bandwidth, right? So that's kind of where it can become important. Where it's not important, which is the thing that most people, not as important, this is where most people kind of initially latch onto this because it's easy to kind of think about, is it doesn't actually matter so much about how much disk space is being used on your machine. And the reason is like, have a look at all of the megabytes in this column, right? I'm not using up all of this disk space. on this VM that I've got running on my machine. Because all of a bunch of these, a whole lot of these images all have shared layers. When we look at the history of .NET, the history of .NET, I can't find history for some reason. When we looked at the history of .NET, we saw these. Each one of these is a layer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know that anybody who starts their whole thing with this line, where they're adding this specific Debian base image, that 125 megabytes is going to be shared between all of the images that are on that machine using that file.
Mm.
That holds true all the way down, right? So if you have 100 applications on your server and they're all Dockerized and they're all coming from Microsoft/.NET, they all share the cost of the Microsoft.NET. You don't pull them again. You don't pull that base image again, and you share, and you don't have more copies of it around. So it makes sense.
It's similar to like how people worry about the size of that Win side-by-side directory, and it's the same kind of thing, right? If there's multiple copies of it, it looks like more than it is.
So in reality, it doesn't matter until it does, I guess. But until you start running out of actual disk space, or you're finding it's really slow to move your image around, right?
Not to put too fine a point on it, but it matters until it, like you said, like it matters, but maybe it doesn't matter as much as people are making it feel like it matters, because it does seem like folks are a little bit hyperplectic about it.
Yeah. Having said that, 1 gigabyte is very big. But
of course. Someone on Gitter just suggested that you could bring in one of the new Ubuntu ones. They're only like 40 megs.
Yeah, they're potentially. Yeah, we have to start looking at some of that.
16.10 rather is 39 megs.
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't started looking at some of those images yet, and that's
so
exactly right.
Not that you wouldn't. Certainly you want Alpine, but at the same time, you could potentially, what is the current? What's the base of the one you're using?
Debian.
And what's the size?
125.
Yeah, there you go. So you dropped 60 megs just by using Ubuntu.
Exactly. Assuming that everything runs fine. Yeah, absolutely. You just got to be careful about switching base images out from underneath people.
Certainly.
So typically, a lot of other people end up just adding yet more tags and yet more things. Like when you look at, I think it was nodes. I think I'm thinking of Node, but see these here, Wheezy. See, these are all Debian based, and you end up with like a Wheezy and a Jessie version, two different versions of Debian, whether you're on old Debian or new Debian.
So here's a funny comment. Before you go away from this, go back to that page.
Yep.
Again, I'm trying to like channel the community. This looks really scary and complicated.
Yeah, they all do.
It's funny.
Basically, any non-trivial Docker image looks scary and complicated.
Because people, again, I hear, the word on the street is that I hear from people that like, oh wow, our Docker area is really scary, and then I'm like, well, gosh, nodes is like equally as scary.
Yeah.
Well,
not that that's an excuse, but still.
No. And part of the thing is this stuff all matters, right? Like it's easy to spin something up real quick, but if you are trying to control what's in your thing, like something else I ran into is like it's easy to like fixate on just the size of the Dockerfile. Like how long the apt-get restore takes can make a big difference too, like on building an image, right?
That is an amazing segue, my friend.
Good.
So over here, I have this thing. I have Troy Dye's Docker Hub, and I'm totally ousting him. And now everybody's going to know who he is. He works on our team, and he built an image called this. In this case, he has two kind of images that he's basically built these on his machine and pushed them to his GitHub account, a GitHub account, Docker Hub account. But they're all public, which means if people really want to go pull these down and have a play with them, they can. And they're probably pretty close to how we would ship these images in the near future. We have a dev and a production ASP.NET Core image. And what the difference between these and the .NET images that we just looked at, I already had images, is that I think I have one of these, Troy Day /ASP.NET Core -development. Is a lot, but actually let's look at the size first. Where do I see the size? Because we're talking about size so much. So it's bigger. Right, 727 megabytes. This is the development image. The production image is not that much bigger. It's only 285 megabytes. But for dev, it's very big, right? The reason it's very big, though, is because we have pre-restored all of ASP.NET's packages into the user profile of the user, the root user. We've got a pre-cross-gen cache of all of the ASP.NET and their dependent assemblies, so you don't pay the JIT cost at startup time. And we have, is that all we've done? Oh, we've already set the ASP.NET Core URLs environment variable here so that you're automatically publicly. So one of the tricks that catches everybody, but if when they start using ASP.NET Core inside a container, is by default, you're only listening on localhost, right? When you go .NET Run or when you run your app. And that local host, when you're inside a container, means you can't access it from outside the container. You actually change either your application or set an environment variable to say, I want you to listen on, some other IP address or just plus or 000 or something. So we set that here to be plus 5,000, I think. So it just listens publicly on 5,000 so that you can then map that. Now, that has been done. So that means now when you do a .NET restore in here, you'll have the .NET CLI package thing that it does on first run to make restores faster. Plus you'll have basically already gone and run restore. We've ran restore once for you, basically. And now if you're only gonna download packages inside this container that aren't part of our stuff, but aren't part of ASP.NET Core's shipping packages. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Cool. And then we have a production one because what we also do, what I said earlier was we have that pre-cross-gen. Pre-cross-gen is the generating of native images for core CLR assemblies. So one of the things that happens in .NET Core, ASP.NET Core, is you start up your application, takes a whole bunch of time to JIT all the assemblies, and your application typically doesn't take long to JIT, but some of our assemblies can. So we include a cache of assemblies that the runtime will go find in here. They've all been pre-jitted, and it costs about 4 or 5 megabytes of disk space. I think maybe 10 megabytes of disk space, and it gives you about 30% improvement in startup cold start perf, like when you first start up your ASP.NET Core app.
Can I ask a question now?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got.
I mean, we'll be talking for hours. But
sure. Well, okay, so this is all good with like spinning up individual instances, and the part where I start running into complexity more is when you're orchestrating multiple. So that you've got like Docker Swarm and Mesos and Kubernetes and all these different like options, right? Do you have any recommendations? Is there something because like what reminded me of this is you've got the SQL Server image up there, right? So now if you're spinning up a web server and like 3 web server instances, a database, and a Redis or whatever.
Right. So if you use Docker, if you use our Visual Studio tooling, they have support for Docker Compose files. So that which work kind of out of the box with Swarm, so that you can have your application image listed in a file, plus like your SQL Server image, and those two will be able to talk to each other. Right. So like I've done it, I think in these two, this music store split that I did, I think in this Razor Pages split as well. Basically you create a Docker Compose file I'm kind of just going to talk about Compose and Swarm because they're just vanilla Docker at this point, and you don't have to go and learn a whole bunch of other stuff with Mesos and things like that. Mesos has some great advantages, and when you use Azure Container Service, you can choose either Swarm or DCOS. So with Docker Compose, you basically list your web app as an image, and then you list all the other images that are going to like logically make up your application. And then what happens is when you're inside your application code, or you can say connect to, and you'll get a DNS name for whatever you named the other images. So if I add MS SQL Server and I call that database, when I'm inside my container, there'll be a DNS entry for a thing called database, which will point to the database server. Right? So like Swarm kind of takes care of that. It's like DNS-based service discovery, right? So you could just lots of details. What basically you could set up my MS SQL Server, call it database, and then your connection string just put database.
Got it.
right?
Okay.
You just use compose for that. And then you can do compose up just on your local machine, and it works. And then if you decide to use Swarm, you can use Swarm. And then I believe that a lot of the others are also kind of starting to be able to either use Swarm or have tools to use compose or files, or at least have a way to convert from like Docker Compose to whatever their thing is where you define that same information, right?
Cool.
But that's like a whole big topic on itself. Orchestrators and composing multiple services and having them all talk to each other and having an orchestrator like do rolling updates and all these sorts of things is all a big
Do you feel like this is maybe a dumb or open-ended question, but do you feel like this is better,
Docker
or is this
better?
just different?
Okay, so
Because it sure seems like a lot of rearranging deck chairs.
Sure. So let's talk about containerizing your build. So today you have a build agent, right? And your build agent has installed on it everything you need to build your application, right? It's kind of special. It has, maybe it's got Visual Studio if you're doing something crazy and the only way you can work out how to make it work is Visual Studio. It's got lots of components. It has things installed. With Docker, if you have a build image, like you have this Microsoft.NET image, and maybe you inherit from that and you add a few extra things that are specific to your application, and then you push that to a private image repository, all that your build agent needs to have is on it is Docker. And then it pulls your build image, it clones your source code, and it builds inside using that image, and then you have outputs, add binaries outputted to like a network share or whatever you're doing, right? So now your build agent is not special. You can have 10 build agents, they can all just have Docker, and they can run a build for any project in your company because they just pull the appropriate build image, right? So the difference is you can treat, this is a clearer way of being able to treat. The kind of analogy they use is cattle versus pets, right? You have a machine that's a pet that you feed and name and is special, or you have a machine that's just got an ID and it doesn't matter. And once you've kind of Dockerized everything, you get a lot closer towards being able to treat your machines not like pets, just being able to not care about the machines, which is a pretty good, I think. It was maybe a long-winded way of saying I think it's good.
No, I love that analogy. I mean, the pets and cattle, it's like, you really do want to be able to not think about it. It moves more towards the whole cloud-based thing of like, and serverless eventually at the end of the day of like, I don't care about my server. And this is like moving in that direction of like, I don't really want to get too attached to my servers. I want to spin them up and throw them away when I'm done.
Yeah. That's kind of what this is, right? Like there's people doing crazy things like spinning up a container for an individual request. Right? They're all super, and so there's isolation benefits like this. It's a big topic, but yeah, it's kind of like you get some of the benefits of VMs without all of the costs, all of the weight of a VM, I guess is the idea at the end of the day. Cool.
All right.
I'm assuming we've taken up way too much time already.
We have. It is a long time.
Yeah.
That's great though. It's nice to see the context and the how and why behind it, because there's a ton of the like, hello world, spin up a Docker container, that's great, but to really understand why you're doing what you're doing and what the commands mean and stuff is good.
Do you want to like kick me off presenting, Scott?
I'm not sure how to do that.
Really?
You did for me.
You have to
like, Inception for me.
Well, you have to click like stop it or whatever. Anyway,
you click up in the green square thing. And then click again on it.
Yeah.
Something.
I'm trying to remember which browser do I have
one of these browsers.
One of these browsers has a call in it that I've minimized, and I no longer know where it is. And that is a problem that I cannot solve. Oh, there it is. Look at that.
Yay!
There we go.
I don't know how to map because I'm clever.
You are screen sharing. There you are. Okay. Let's dramatic zoom out and then let's go to lunch.
Okay. I will try and answer some questions on Gitter since apparently we didn't get any.
We did, but I mean, we talked for an hour or two.
That's good.
Okay.
Bye.
Dramatic zoom out. It's so dramatic.